TIL about Exploding Head Syndrome EHS, a type of sleep disorder in which you hear a loud noise or explosive crashing sound in your head. The sound isn't real or heard by anyone else. I used to suffer from this a lot in my 20s. Mostly it was if I'd been staying up too late or drinking too much and having hangover sleep. One time I woke up to not only the bang but also a bright light. Turns out a substation had blown up across the street and it woke up my roomie too. That was the only time I felt a hint of kindred spirit about the condition. The time when it was actually something real. My husband and I had a neighbor that must have suffered from this. She made countless noise complaints about us to management. We installed soft close doors on everything. At one point we had people in our apartment making a ton of noise trying to replicate the sounds and they couldn't. She ended up moving out years ago. I hope they were able to figure out what was causing her so much distress. I have intense dreams where I am vaporized. Asteroid, nuclear destruction, random explosion. Anyhow, I wake up and my entire body is numbed by the sensation. It is typically paired with a loud bang, which is what actually wakes me up. I jolt awake and look around to see what caused the sound, and everyone dog and wife is sleeping peacefully while my heart rate is 200 BPM. I used to get this often as a kid, but it wasn't necessarily near sleep, and for me it was just all internal sound was dialed up to an impossible volume, mostly voices. I haven't thought about this in years. The fact that I had a father with extreme and terrifying anger issues, though I wasn't beaten, intuitively feels like it's related. Here, I have this, I can kind of use it as a meter to determine my stress level. When I start getting really stressed it starts getting worse. Sometimes it is a bang, or explosion, a lot of other times it is just another ultra-realistic sound like my doorbell ringing, or someone knocking at my door, or someone shouting my name. I have had that before. Never had a stroke or a seizure, though it's what I imagine one feels like. It's more than a sound, though, it's like a very loud brain zap. It doesn't sound like it's from outside, it feels like a foghorn's been set off right in both ears. I hate them, mostly have them trying to sleep lunchrooms. I get this whenever I have a night where I have difficulty falling asleep. I'll be up for hours, then finally slip into an early resting phase only to be jolted awake by an extremely loud metallic crack. It sucks. Feels like my body saying oh, starting to finally get some rest. Shaky sound, the thunder. I've gotten these my whole life, usually as I'm just starting to fall off to sleep. Sometimes a loud crashing sound and I'm wide awake thinking what the fuck was that? But more often, it's an electric zap which is accompanied by a bright flash. I've had these since I was a kid and I'm now 50. I experienced this quite often many years ago. The scare upon awakening is frightening. But the strangest thing of all is that I researched on the internet and discovered that EHS was exactly what was happening to me, and since I became aware of it, it has not happened to me again. That and occasionally there is pain that accompanies the boom. I've started having them more recently and I'm wondering if it's somehow associated with secondary concussion syndrome, or concussions in general. I don't like it, but it's only happened a handful of times. When I moved to a new house I remember being awoken to the sound of an interior door slamming. Scared the shit out of me for a month or two as I thought an old tenant may still have a key or something. This would happen a few times a week. Definitely stress related. I started getting this after the military. I will be laying in bed and hear a large pipe or board hit the ground. It's crazy because I can feel the sound like it had a real wave and tell you what direction the noise came from even though it never existed. Oh my god, so there's an explanation for my crazy outburst in 2011. I remember waking up the whole house but nobody heard anything. Not gonna lie, it's kinda making me panic that it's something that could happen again out of the blue. I don't think I like this. It really sucks to wake up suddenly and violently, heart beating and totally shocked into consciousness. It's been a while since I've had them, not since college stress, but mine always sounded somewhat like a loud electrical arc sparking inside my skull. I used to get this every night just as I was about to drift off to sleep. It would startle the hell out of me, but after it happened I knew I was about to actually fall asleep, so it was welcomed. Doesn't happen so much anymore, for whatever reason. I get it on occasion. Very strange, because I wake up, but then I realize the sound was internal and not real. Freaky stuff. I am still not sure how my brain realizes it isn't real. Or, I have been ignoring explosions in my neighborhood. I used to have this a lot as a kid, but instead of being jolted awake or any other negative reaction I always felt relieved when I got it because it meant I was going to fall asleep for sure. And hell, it works like a charm every single time. Mine sounds like a massive bang. The first time it happened I thought a car had crashed outside my bedroom window. absolutely scared the crap out of me, and I couldn't understand why my husband didn't hear it. I have this, and sometimes it sounds like someone kicked in the door, and other times it sounds so loud it's like a tooth exploding in my mouth. It's hard to not wake up in a panic when going through it. This isn't the first time I learned about it, but I was so glad when I did. It's such an odd thing to happen and really scare the shit out of you until you're familiar with what's going on. I get this sometimes. Usually ahead of something else. Like once it was the sound of suddenly being in a room with hundreds of people talking and clapping, and then boom, food poisoning. Guy had this once, and at least for me, it was during the time and circumstances that I was sleepwalking. X200B. It was terrifying, but one of the funniest stories I used to tell. Don't know if it's related, but if I'm listening to something using headphones and doze off, I get a similar sensation, but instead of an explosion it sounds like a needle scratch. Seem to leave out that you see flashes in your eyes instead of the sound. So when something bangs loud you get a flash of light in your eyes as well. That's the main symptom. I have this, but it only happens when I'm sleep deprived, and it happens right at the moment when you actually fall asleep. It sounds like an explosion for sure. I have this, and now I know what it is. It always sounds like something fell down or rodents causing noise. Or sometimes something running on the roof. I get this sometimes. It sounds like an incredibly loud crack of thunder which briefly jolts you awake, and it really does sound like it's outside. I have this. Sometimes it's an explosion, sometimes it's like somebody dropped a heavy book. Occasionally it's like someone speaking my name. Had this once. Waited to die thinking it was in some kind of audible aneurysm. Spoiler, still alive, wasn't sure why I heard what I heard. I sometimes hear a loud roaring noise that wakes me up. It almost sounds like a lion roaring. The first time I heard it I got spooked. I always thought my brain was misfiring. It's crazy when you hear something so incredibly loud and no one else around you heard it. Never knew what this was, only started happening to me recently, and it isn't frequent. Thought I was losing my mind. Thanks for this. I get this all the time and it can be absolutely infuriating. I'll be just near sleep and then bang, and now I'm awake again. Had it one time a few years ago. I thought someone was using a jackhammer inside my house. Thank God it's not happened since. One time I had this happen, but it was the sound of someone screeching at the top of their lungs, like right by my ear. Sounds similar to what I get when I try to quit antidepressants. A loud explosion in my head, then a bright flash. I thought I had this until I figured out it was just a bear trying to get into our dumpster every few nights. I didn't know this was a thing. I always heard a sound as if someone buried an axe or hatchet into my head. I've had this like twice in my entire life. Last time was in like 2010-11. Before then, when I was a child. One time it was a gunshot, the other was a car crash. Always sounded like it came from outside the house. I've had this happen. It sounded like someone pounding hard on a door. No one else in the house heard it. This explains half of the posts in my local subreddit. Did anybody hear that boom last night? I bet it's people's sinuses. Mine make really weird noises sometimes that sound like thunder. I experience this. Mine often sounds like a powerful burst of high voltage electricity. Thank God this wasn't what I initially thought it was before reading the whole text. It's happened to me during fever dreams. Could it be related to body temperature? It sounds like a train crash and only happens to me when I'm incredibly exhausted. I have this. It's very disconcerting, even after you find out what it is. Mine sounds like a burst of static. Or like those giant Tesla coils. I think I've had this while sleeping and it woke me up a few times. So that's what it's called. I sometimes experience this. Get this often. Most of the time it's when I'm hungover. What about if I think I'm hearing farts in my sleep?